To Startup Street on our special segment, Future Female Forward. Today we have a guest who is easily one of the founders of the Indian startup ecosystem. She has mentored founders over the last 2 decades and co-founded many of the relevant entrepreneurial institutions, besides being an active angel investor herself. She has been awarded as one of the top 50 most powerful women in business by Fortune India for 4 years, is listed in Forbes India's Women Power Trailblazers and 30 most powerful women in India by Business Today for 3 years running. The Women Economic Forum recognized her with its Women of the Decade in Investment Banking Award. Joining me now is Padmaja Ruparel, the co-founder of Indian Angel Network and founding partner of the Indian Angel Network Fund. Padmaja, many thanks for joining us today on this very special segment. Let's get straight to the point. While the gap between women and men in the startup ecosystem is narrowing, it is still a wide one. Firstly, what has changed over the last many years? And secondly, what are some of the aspects that need to be addressed in this context?
First of all, thank you very much for having me on the show, Shruti. Delighted to join. I think you've started right off the bat. You're right. I think over the years, we've seen that gap narrowing, but the issue is really that the gap was very wide and still remains very wide. We are still seeing women entrepreneurs at under 20% overall, and they are raising a much lower percentage in terms of funding. I think there are a few things that we can surely do. One of the things that we've seen over the last year or 2 years is the fact is there are women entrepreneurs who've really succeeded, who've not only built large unicorns, but also gone listed. I think that's the iconic role models that have started to emerge. And the more we celebrate and the more we can sort of project them will only help, because then others will get inspired. The second thing I think is very important is women don't have complete ownership on their financial assets. And in some ways, I think we have to address that, because unless they can sort of have the power, not only in name, but in actual power to use the money and create liquidity, which they can then plow back into their companies, I think that is very important. And I think the last piece, which is very important, women who have succeeded, if you go back, scratch a little bit under the surface, you will see that there's been a supportive spouse and a supportive family. I think in some ways, again, this needs to be brought to the fore.
A supporting ecosystem is a must, Padmaja. But tell me, at Indian Angel Network, how many pitches, do you get a month, and how many are women-led?
We get about 1,000 pitches a month, somewhere there. And I think we have been seeing an upward trend in terms of percentage, which is great. We were getting somewhere around 12 to 14, 15% about 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago. I think we are now seeing a higher number. We are closer to 20%, which is great.
Padmaja, there is also a dearth of women in investing as well. Very few names come to my mind. So what needs to change there as well?
No, you're absolutely right. You couldn't hit the nail better. If you look at senior professionals in the VC industry, right, in China, that's about 15%. If you look at India, that's about 7%. If we assume that we have about 10,000 angels in the country, there are only 1% that are women investors. And out of that, I think there will be only 0.3 or 0.35 or 0.4, which are really actively investing. So you're absolutely right. There is a huge dearth of women investors. What will really get this going is in the investing business, you can't just get up and start a fund. I think there needs to be a track record, there needs to be experience on all of good things that we talk about. So in funds, I think there needs to be a conscious onboarding of women investment professionals. For instance, at IAN, almost 50% of our team is women, right? And it is these women who will, young ladies who will get into the ecosystem, start at a lower, start looking at companies, diligencing them, start growing them, and then they will start getting into senior roles or partner levels and raise a fund and do all the good things. And I'll be one of the happiest if any of my team members grows into starting a fund. I think it's the greatest thing.
Before I let you go, 16 January is National Startup Day. In fact, Indian Angel Network has seeded and grown startups with an investment of over 900 crore rupees, which now have a collective market valuation of over $9 billion. As we all know, 2022 was a tough year for late-stage growth startups, but early-stage funding has been an outlier. How do you see 2023 turning out for the ecosystem, and what advice do you have for founders as they grapple economic headwinds?
I would like to congratulate the government, through your channel, that 16 January 2016 was a milestone day for the startup ecosystem. It really put a spotlight on this ecosystem, and as you know, it's becoming center stage. Yes, at IAN, we did announce our 1,000 crore fund, and this is aligned with IAN's vision of really investing in 500 startups with 5,000 crores and creating 5 lakh jobs by 2030. And I think this is because job creation is very critical. What I would really suggest to entrepreneurs, I think in the early stage, there is really no downturn. I mean, investors are investing. They're looking for companies which are building high growth revenue lines, but are either profitable or on a path to profitability. So please build dhandhas. Just having a revenue line is not enough. Have a top line and a bottom line. Think cash flow, think profitability, think things like gross margins, contribution margins, unit economics. And I think good companies will always be able to raise money.
On that note, it's time for us to wrap up our conversation. Many thanks, Padmaja, for joining us on Startup Street today.
Thank you, Shruti. Thank you.
Well, that was Padmaja.